A reading from David White, Sometimes. Sometimes if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the old ones in the old stories, who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place where there's only one task, and it's to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place, beginning to lead everywhere. Requests to stop what you are doing right now and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away. Here ends our reading. So this past Thursday, January 6th, was the 2-year anniversary of the Capitol insurrection, a day when many of us watched horrified as the epiphany hit us that something had become deeply destabilized in our democracy. January 6th is also the day on which many Christian churches celebrate Epiphany, the 12th day of Christmas, the day the Magi showed up after riding for weeks on their camels across the desert, bringing with them highly impractical, but deeply symbolic baby gifts. For Russian Orthodox Christian, that day is still coming up on the 19th, so you've got 11 more days to mentally prepare yourself to celebrate Epiphany alongside thousands of Russians who will cut cross-shaped holes into the ice of the Mana River in Siberia and immerse themselves in the water, while the outside air temperature hovers somewhere deeply below freezing. They'll don their swimming suits, and they'll jump in as their local priests egg them on. I invite you to remember them if you ever feel that Unitarian Universalism or our church asks too much of you. It could be worse. Epiphanies, these stories suggest, can be profound and powerful and symbolic and meaningful, but they may also be deeply uncomfortable, even painful. I can share from personal experience that riding a camel in the desert is just that. Have you ever watched a camel move? It's got both this backward slide and a forward rounded jolt in its gait, and after just a mile of this motion, most people's backs will be crying out for a leave. And yet, the ancient tale relates that 3 travelers read the stars, making them unique in the story as the only people who showed up manger-side by instinct, rather than as a consequence of being stunned and instructed by bossy celestial beings. The Magi are not granted the favor of being told what's important by something or someone that is so totally outside the realm of their experience that they can do nothing but pay attention. They have to figure out the importance on their own. They figure out the importance and they risk sounding ridiculous to their neighbors. I have seen something that urges me to cross the desert on a camel without shock absorption for 1,000 miles. Okay, Balthazar, I'll water the plants. They figure out what the importance is and they stick with it. Because let's face it, epiphanies can be ignored. They can be denied. They can be lost in the clutter of the days. An epiphany is not a magical voice from the outside. It is not a miraculous vision that transports us to another realm. It is not divine intervention nor the sort of transcendent experience that lifts us up or beyond the everyday world. It is actually a heightened awareness of what we often treat as negligible, as ignorable, a particular focus on what is plainly before us. An epiphany does not make a grand entrance. It is not loud and flashy. We have to work to preserve them, to record them with care, and to respond to them. I keep a very infrequent journal, one that I have dipped into at various seasons in my life. Like other chores of my life, I love having kept a journal, but I'm not a fan of actually keeping one. I love the idea of the journal, but the work itself challenges me. At any rate, the end result is that when I look back over previous entries, I see myself having repeated epiphanies, understandings that emerge and which the self I was when I wrote it is convinced that I will hang on to forever. And then 2 years later, I'll write about the exact same epiphany as though I've never before thought these ideas, and I'll be so proud of myself for coming to that awareness. This speaks to the nature of epiphanies, right? If they exist only as ideas that we never act on, if we never truly internalize them in our bodies, they have to come at us many times before we can really take them in. When we tell the tale of the Magi following a star, we are lifting up three things. What possibilities are there for us to receive a new vision, a new call? If we open ourselves to receive it, how can we bring it within ourselves? How can we take action rather than just letting a new awareness sit as a static understanding in our lives? Remember, in the ancient tale, the Magi don't just follow the star, they go home. They go home by another way that's very specific. Herod had said, "Come back and tell me where this boy is." And they said, "We're gonna go home by another way." They return home changed by the experience. That return is as important a part of the story as is the arrival. Because epiphanies and ahas and guiding understandings and revelations, these are not bolts of lightning that suddenly force us to change our lives. Nothing changes unless we allow ourselves to take the experiences of extraordinary moments and bring them back with us into the ordinary, everyday lives we live. The experience of epiphanies lies in preparing ourselves internally, that we might know and read the signs and then head out and take action and allow ourselves to be changed by what we receive when we encounter others on a walk through the woods with a dog that needs some house training, and you meet a little boy, an epiphany. Are you waiting for something to tell you to take a first step? What sign are you looking for? Do you need a sign? Which direction are you supposed to be headed in? How will you know? Is it the same place that you thought you were headed 3 years ago? How long were the Magi traveling for anyway? By camel. Which prompts the question, just how long does anyone have to keep their eyes on a star, any star? And do we judge ourselves as dilettantes when our eyes skitter from one celestial object to the next, like astronomical magpies, always in search of the next bright, beautiful thing, the panacea for all that pains us, forgetting to engage in the quiet, settled, deep, reflective discernment around where we're headed and why, what motivates us, and whether that's a worthy source. The questions that animate our lives, that operate as guiding stars, those questions don't go away. Those questions have no right to go away. We may choose to stop paying attention to them for a while. We may need to experience the same epiphany repeatedly, but one day we'll read the signs and we'll open the book and we'll make ourselves deeply uncomfortable, and this time it will stick. What are you called on toward? When it makes itself visible to you, are you prepared to follow where it leads, even if it's scary? Even if it means leaving the easy chair and Netflix and hopping on the 21st century version of a camel. They had to see where it would take them, even as they knew it meant bringing themselves into the sphere and influence of a paranoid and treacherous king, even as it forced them to stay alert to the machinations and manipulations of a political world that was not interested in a radical overthrow of the world order promised by a star. What allowed them to stay with the project, to stay with the journey? They had to have faith in the importance of what they were seeing, of course. They had to have a strong sense of purpose. They had to have a line tethered directly to their deepest values that held the center like a gyroscope, even as the epiphanies toward which they were drawn sought to push them off course into a wobble. Friday the 6th was Epiphany and a painful national anniversary. Wednesday the 4th was an annual celestial experience of the perihelion that brings our home planet into its closest yearly proximity to the sun. We get 3 million miles closer than when we are at the aphelion on the 6th of July. You would be surprised by that because it's chilly. But together as a planet, we fly the same distance from the sun as everyone else. We are all on it and in it together. Home, epiphanies and stars and celestial events and camels and journeys, these are all invitations toward action. And what we choose to do with the invitations when they arrive, that's where the work we've been doing in finding our center, knowing our core values and what they demand of us, that's when all the preparation, or lack thereof, becomes apparent. Because the thing about epiphanies is that they cannot be planned, and they cannot be prepared for. Their very nature demands surprise and off-centeredness. Indeed, one wonders if any epiphany can emerge if we stay too rooted in that place of deep, grounded certainty. In the grand biblical tradition, revelations are disruptions. They come from places of mystery and wonder, and they surprise, and they throw a wrench into the day-to-day humdrum of existence, and they slam us as we are simply living our lives, getting from one thing to the next. We cannot make an epiphany happen, no matter how bright or odd the behavior of the star in the sky. The star is a thing outside yourself, but you cannot triangulate to the right star unless you understand your own motivations in seeking a star to begin with. Finding your center, that gyroscopic weight and the only orbit that allows something that is fixed and that is orbiting because there's that fixed point that feels established and settled and not under construction. Except, how could our fixed lives not to be under construction at this point in our collective global lives? Everything feels under construction right now. To truly engage the epiphany, we must know and trust ourselves and allow ourselves to be changed and directed by the powerful, unplanned external forces and people we encounter every day. What a waste of an epiphany, then, if we insist on returning home by the same road, or never leaving home at all. Let's, all of us, together, all of us who inhabit the same home, really 3 million miles away from the sun, if we measure our individual distances, we're all in the same location. Let's recognize the extraordinary moments we have been given and keep that recognition in sight long enough to allow ourselves to be moved and meaningfully changed by all of our encounters with this world and its inhabitants, and then help one another to carry the importance of these new understandings back with us as we work together to navigate a new way home. May it be so. Amen.